So over the last 2 weeks, you guys have seen a ton of volatility on the markets, a lot of macroeconomic data affecting the markets, CPI last week and PPI this week. You've seen some large upside moves, some large downside moves, and this volatility can start to blur the picture on the technical side. In today's video, I want to do a recap of the technical analysis on the NASDAQ and the S&P 500, give you guys a good picture of where we are sitting after all this volatility and all this macroeconomic data has affected the markets. I hope that this video serves as a refresher of what technical levels to watch out for on both the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 so that you guys can best prepare in the upcoming trading days. If you guys enjoyed this analysis, make sure to press that like button after watching, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to trade live with me every single day, make sure to check it out down in the description below. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. On your screen, you are looking at the daily chart on the S&P 500 futures. This is the /ES. We're going to go ahead and start the analysis here, go to the SPY ETF, and then we're also going to go to the NASDAQ as well. So here on your screen, you are looking at the last year of price action on the ES, the S&P 500 futures on the daily chart. I'm going to go ahead and start this from the larger term time frames, and then I'm going to go ahead and dive in deeper. So the first thing I want to point out on this chart is the channel that we have been in since the beginning of this year. The first thing we want to go ahead and chart out is the channel right here. This is the longer term channel that we have been trading in. This is the sort of move that we've seen since the beginning of 2022. We've seen the downside back to the upside. We're sort of just channeling to the downside. And you can see recently, just about in October, we started to make that leg to the upside, just like we have in the past, which eventually has stalled at the top of the channel. Now, you guys can see this time around, we are not quite at the top of the channel there, which could beg that maybe there is more upside here to the top of that channel. I think this is something that a lot of people are watching, and I think a lot of people are looking to potentially short this market as we start to get back towards the top of this channel, which could be a very viable option, which could be a very great trade. If you're just looking at technicals, if you're looking at what's happened over the last year, shorting at the top of this channel is definitely not a bad trade when looking back at what has happened in the past. So that is definitely the first thing that I'm watching. The top of this channel would come in right around 4,100 on the ES. So 4,100 is the channel high right there roughly. It depends on how quickly we get there, but 4,100 is just about where the top of that channel is on the S&P 500 futures, and that is the first thing that I want to go ahead and point out in this analysis. The next thing that I want to point out here on the S&P 500, still on the daily chart, is the 200 SMA on the daily chart, and you guys can see that is your red line that is running across the screen now, and that is where we have previously rejected on this market multiple times as well. So you can see back here, this is back in April, we rejected that 200 SMA and moved to the downside. On the last push to the upside in sort of August, from June, July into August, we saw that push up to that channel high, which also correlated to that 200 SMA. This was a very major rejection point on the markets. You guys can see the 200 SMA and that channel high coming together at the same exact point. Now, as we approach the upside of this channel, we can see that that 200 SMA is still trending to the downside, and you can see we're starting to approach it as well. The 200 SMA is sitting at just around 4,080 on the ES, with the channel high right around that 4,100. So you could start to get some heavy action up here towards this 4,080, 4,100, and this is definitely something you need to be paying attention to if you're trading this market, that the ES is starting to approach a similar rejection point that we saw back here in August. So make sure to watch out for that 200 SMA and that 4,100 channel high level that we are starting to approach on the ES. Definitely something to have on your charts when you are looking at the longer term analysis and you are zooming out on where this market has moved over the last few weeks. So when it comes to the longer term analysis, I think this is really all you need to be looking at. This is a pretty simple analysis, but this has been very effective so far this year. Every single time we've touched this channel high, we've seen some type of rejection or some heavy action. Every time we've gotten close to that 200 SMA, we have got heavy as well. So you can see over the last few weeks, we've gotten a big push due to CPI and PPI data coming in lower than expected. You have to be careful up here, right? Maybe this is the time we break out. Maybe this is the push that we need to get above these levels, but you can't be getting too overly aggressive. As we start to get close to these levels, the entry points to get aggressive are back at the channel lows if you want to go long, right? If you're looking to go long in this market, the channel lows have been great entry points, but you need to start looking to potentially take profits, or you need to start getting less aggressive on the long side as you start to approach these channel highs. If anything, if the market starts to get weak, if we start to see some heavy action in the market, then you know you are potentially shorting at a better point than you were back at the lows, potentially shorting at the channel highs as well as the 200 SMA. So now that we have that longer term analysis, I want to go ahead and jump into the 4-hour chart and look at this over the last few weeks and show you guys what has happened here over the last few weeks and what we need to be paying attention to. So the first thing that I want to show you guys here is the last 2 to 3 weeks on the S&P 500. This is the 4-hour chart. Now, the big level that we were watching on the S&P 500 was this high right here around this 39.30. Now, 39.30 was important because we had a previous rejection here. This is back in September, and we rejected it right here. This is back in the beginning of November. So we had a little bit of a double top rejection at this 39.30 on the ES, and we saw that we were able to break above that off of CPI. Now, after breaking this level, we have yet to come back and retest that previous high. This is something that I like to see a lot on the markets. I like to see markets break out of previous rejection points, but to believe it and to be able to trust more upside, I like to see it pull back and try to retest that level, turning that previous rejection point into support. And that is something that we have not seen yet. We have not seen the ES pull back to this 39.30. We have not seen whether this is a legitimate demand level that can build here for another upside push. So if we see downside on this market into the coming days, into end of week, I would be looking for a potential retest of this 39.30. I think this is something that is necessary. I think the market will want to see a pullback to this level, see if buyers step in at this 39.30, and see if there is another upside move off that 39.30 retest, which was the previous rejection that came in November and the previous rejection that came in back in September. Now, with this retest level here at 39.30, it makes it quite easy to know whether the momentum to the upside is going to be lost, because if we come back down to this 39.30 level and we turn it into a rejection point rather than seeing it be support, then this is definitely a sign of weakness to come, right? If we come down to this 39.30, if we start to show rejections at this level, then we know that we are back below the rejections that came in November, that came in back here in September. If we do not hold this previous high that was built here over about 2 to 3 months, then we know weakness is going to step in. So if we get a pullback on the ES, you have to be paying attention to this 39.30. If we see this level step in and turn into a rejection point again, that is definitely a telltale sign that there could be more weakness ahead if we do not turn this level into support. So I know a lot of traders also like to look at the SPY. It's the same exact thing as the S&P 500 futures, but if you use the SPY, the level that you should be watching is that 390.5 that is right here. You guys can see the rejections back in September, the rejections in November, and you can see this is the same type of retest level that we're talking about on the ES futures. It is 390.5, 390.5. That is the level that you want to be watching here. It's the same type of analysis as the ES. If you turn this into a support on a retest, then you could still potentially see upside off that level. But losing that level is going to cause downside momentum. It will lose that bullish momentum if we turn that level back into a rejection point and start to see that downside step in. Now, I want to break this down one more step on the S&P 500 futures, because there is a level that will give us some insight onto whether we will get this pullback to this 39.30. To see this, we're going to have to go down to the 15-minute chart. Here on the 15-minute chart, guys, you can see the last 3 trading days. The last 3 trading days have been relatively flat, but there is a level that has started to show demand that if we break down below this level, I think you will retest this 39.30 level below. And to me, that looks like it is right around either this 39.50 or potentially it is around this previous low around 39.60. This 39.60 to 39.50 area has built some type of a short-term demand here over the last 3 days. So you guys can see over the last 3 days, this is back on Friday. We pulled back to this level and we held this support. This was also a support after the CPI back on Thursday of last week. We came back down to this level yesterday on Monday and we turned it into a support. And also today, after you saw that quick downside intraday on the S&P 500, we moved right back down to that 39.60, 39.50 zone that started to build some demand over the last 3 trading days. So to me, I think this is your line in the sand on the ES. If you break below this demand, I think 39.50 is your last line. If you break below that 39.50, I think you're coming in for that retest at 39.30, and that is where we'll have to see if the market holds up. If it does, maybe there's another upside push. right? If we get that 39.30 retest and we turn it into support, maybe you get your push one more time on this market. Or if you do break down to that 39.30, you turn it into a rejection point, then I would look for us to move lower and potentially give up some of this big upside that we saw back on CPI here, back on Thursday of last week. You can also see on this 15-minute chart that 200 SMA, that is our red line that we talked about earlier, and this dotted line up here, which is that channel high on the daily chart. You can see we're getting close to those levels, and we could see some heavy action as we start to approach. So I think this S&P 500 can give you a good picture here. You're starting to get into some heavy levels up here. You've created a channel here over the last 3 trading days. If you do lose this 39.60, 39.50, I think you will be in for that 39.30 retest. And if we do not hold this 39.30 retest, watch out for more downside. If we break below this previous level, look to see if we do give back any of this CPI move, which is right here. This is back from Thursday of last week. So guys, let's go ahead and switch over to the NASDAQ. This is the NASDAQ, the /NQ, the NASDAQ futures on the daily chart. Let's go ahead and do that similar analysis, and let's go ahead and break down this market. So on the daily chart, we can see a very similar type of beginning analysis. We have the channel that we've been in since 2022, and we have the 200 SMA that's acted as a rejection point above. So you can see we rejected that 200 SMA and that channel high right here back in March. You can see we moved back to the channel low. We held that channel low. We pushed back up. We pushed back up to the channel high, very close to that 200 SMA as well, and we've started to creep back down to that channel low. Now this time, you can see it's a little interesting, right? It's a little bit different here this time around. You can see we didn't quite come back to that channel low, which is interesting in my opinion, right? Do we still need to come back to that channel low? Is there more lows on this market? That is something that you definitely need to be paying attention to. We started to push higher. We created some type of a double bottom here around this 10,700 level. So right around this 10.7, you can see we've created this double bottom, which is sort of in the middle of nowhere. It's not really at the channel low. You could potentially say it held these previous lows, but it is a little bit of a strange area that this market held up at this 10.7, not a channel low like we have previously, just sort of right here at this double bottom. So that is a little bit questionable, a little bit something that I think you should be paying attention to, that double bottom at 10.7. Now, you have seen upside in the last week due to PPI and CPI, and you're starting to push back towards that channel high again. So same thing as the S&P. We're getting that push towards that channel high, towards that 200 SMA. Do we need to get a little bit higher, right? Do we need to get up towards this level? That would be right around that 12.4, 12.5 area. If we got more upside on this market, there could be maybe still a push towards this 12.5 area, which is that channel high and that 200 SMA. Now, if we do get more upside, we just have to be aware of this level, right? We need, as a trader, we need to know where our levels are, and that channel high and 200 SMA is definitely something to be paying attention to. Now, if we break this down to the 4-hour chart, the same thing we did on the ES, that important level that we had to get over was right around this 11,700 area, 11,730. That was a previous rejection point on this 4-hour chart. You can see we rejected this back on, this is the September 22nd, right here, September 22nd. We had a rejection of this 11,730. We had another rejection right here back on the 5th and 6th of October. We came back into this level again. This is on later in October. This is October 25th, and we found another rejection. So we have a little bit of a triple top on this NASDAQ at this 11,700 area. You can see recently off of CPI and PPI, we have broken above this level, and we also retested this level. So you can see we broke above this level, previous triple top, turned it into support, and pushed to the upside again today. But this move quickly faded today after seeing that harsh upside. Now, this level makes it quite easy to read. So if you are sort of confused on this market, I want you to pay attention to this 11,700 area on the NASDAQ, because I think this is a very easy line in the sand to be paying attention to on the NASDAQ markets. If the NASDAQ comes back down and tests this level, if it turns it into support again, if we find demand at this level again, there could be still upside on this market, potentially up to that channel high and that 200 SMA. If the NASDAQ is weak and pulls back under this previous rejection point, turns it into a rejection again, and we start to see weakness under 11,730, 11,700, then you know that we are turning this level into a rejection again, that we have rejected here, that we have rejected here, and that we have rejected here. If we break down and turn this into a rejection again and start to see this market get very weak under this 11,730 area, then we can anticipate potential downside. We know that if the market is turning previous rejection points into support, that is a bullish scenario. And in that case, you would need to hold 11,730 as support. You need to see this previous rejection point turn into a support, which it has done so far. Now, if that changes, if we do not turn this previous rejection point into a support, then we can anticipate potential downside. And this would be the move that I would look for a potential short entry on this market if we turn this previous rejection point into a rejection point again in the coming weeks. Now, if we look at this chart on the 30-minute, we can clearly see where this level lies, right? We can clearly see that line in the sand. We've seen it find support here. We see it found support yesterday on Monday, and we saw it find support once again today. So you can clearly see that line in the sand. If you are watching this market on an intraday basis, if you see this thing break below Monday's lows, if you see it turn it into a rejection, and you start to see this get heavy, then you should be able to see if you can catch a downside move here, looking for a potential move to the downside to potentially give back some of this big CPI move. If you see a pullback, but this is not giving up this level, if we continue to hold demand at this 11,730 and start to maybe make higher lows and higher highs, then this market could still potentially see upside if we continue to hold the demand that it has built. So I think that this 11,730 is a crucial level to be paying attention to on this NASDAQ. I think this gives you every insight you need to get a feel for where that momentum is on the market. And for me, on the ES, it really is that 3930. But I also am going to watch this little short-term support that is built around this 3960 to 3950. I still believe that if this market sees downside, you need to come down and retest this 3930 previous rejection point and potentially prove it into a support. So guys, that was the analysis I wanted to go ahead and provide in today's video. The NASDAQ, the S&P 500, I think some very clear levels to be watching here. Make sure to go back, rewind, pause the video. If you have any questions about the levels, put those levels on your charts. Make sure to be watching these areas. I think these are your crucial supply and demand levels to be watching into the next coming days and next coming weeks on this market. If you enjoyed today's analysis and you want more of it, make sure to come hang out in the pre-market live streams where I do this analysis every single morning. Make sure to join the Discord down below where I provide this analysis as well. 100% free. It says free technicals. And if you want to trade live with me on a daily basis, you can see trade live with me down in the description below. Check that out. Feel free to come hang out with us. Come join the trading community if you have interest in that as well. Once again, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Press that like button, subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.